All right, well, welcome to What's New in Apple OS Upgrades, one of our favorite webinars of the year. We're going to get this kicked off here and rock and roll, seeing a lot of folks joining. We'll be touching on, of course, all of the popular operating systems coming from Apple and much more. But before we get going, a quick introduction here. My name is Garrett, part of the product marketing organization at Jamf. So thrilled to be with you. Of course, a lot to cover on this webinar, as there seems to be every year. So a quick look ahead at our agenda. Won't linger too long here, but just to give you an idea of where this journey is going. Over the next couple of minutes, we'll walk through each of these sections and also leave time for live Q&A at the end. So feel free to toss your questions in the chat. Happy to tackle those either during, if we can, or for sure at the end of the call. So let's jump right into it and begin by talking about OS upgrades season, or the season of the year when we get brand new operating systems from Apple. This is a very exciting time of year, and I think one of the most impactful for most of our customers, most of you that are doing this as IT admins and IT leaders. Now, looking back over the previous years, we'll see that Jamf has been very closely aligned with Apple on this, and whenever Apple ships a major operating system, whether it be desktop or mobile, Jamf is right there with Apple delivering same-day support. And this is something we've talked about for years. If you've been around Jamf, you have likely heard our same-day support message. This is something that is very critical to us. We put a lot of time and thought into this every year, but only because it's so critical to you. We know that in businesses and education institutions, that upgrades are a major opportunity. And so we want to talk about that today, the opportunity for you to really be the IT hero, and Jamf wants to get you there. Now, a couple of notes here, really interesting things happening in the market. Same day is changing, and so I want to give a couple of comments here on the concept of same-day support. Number one, Apple has more operating systems than it used to and does not ship them all at once. Previously, a couple of years ago, I can remember this, there would be one single day when Apple made all of the new operating systems available. Not the case anymore. They do ship on different days, and so that is critical. The cadence is changing. Jamf is changing as well, and we have a portfolio of products today that help our customers succeed with Apple. Rather than just a single product, we are a broad portfolio that really helps people succeed in many different ways. Third and finally, pairing Jamf and Apple unlocks really interesting, unique value. We will touch on this later, but as an example, things like Jamf Teacher, Jamf Educator, Jamf Setup, and Jamf Reset. Those are all applications and additional resources that are built on top of Apple to extend that value, really making Jamf plus Apple a match made in heaven. So with these changes, we really thought this year, it's time to go back to the drawing board on our definition of same-day support. This is a real opportunity for you, again, to be the IT hero, and it's a chance for Jamf to be more clear about the ways that we want to support you now and going into the future. So this is the future of same-day support with Jamf. No longer is it a single commitment like it was, where we used to say we will be compatible and supporting key features from Apple on release day. Instead, we are broadening our promise to you and expanding that definition of same-day support to make sure that this is the most broad and most expansive promise we can make to make you the most successful you can be. And so number one is, of course, still supporting Apple every step of the way, remaining in lockstep with Apple. Number two is accelerating key technologies from Apple, exciting new workflows that they are releasing that we want to see the market adopt. And third and finally is extend. We want to build on top of Apple and be a key partner that, again, delivers unique value. And so things you cannot find elsewhere in the marketplace, like Jamf Setup and Jamf Reset, that is a powerful pair of applications that really makes our customers succeed in a very interesting way. In that case with shared devices, but in many other ways with other unique plus one solutions, if you will. So let's click on these quickly and then dive into some new features from Apple. Support is, again, our core commitment that you've heard about from Jamf for years. So when an end user unboxes that new Apple device, or on the flip side, they have an existing Apple device that they are ready to upgrade, that end user is ready to go. They can click the upgrade button with confidence. The IT admin can oversee that upgrade season with confidence the day that Apple makes it available. That is same-day support. When there's a change available, you can be successful with it with Jamf, should you choose. Now, of course, you can always delay operating system upgrades as well if that makes sense for your organization. That is something that Apple makes available and Jamf supports. But on the flip side, if you're ready to go on day one, Jamf is ready with you. So we can make that successful. Bucket number 2 is accelerate. We touched on this, but Jamf shares Apple's vision that the future of work demands new and innovative solutions. And so Apple is debuting a lot of new technology, a lot of new workflows that are really exciting and really driving this industry forward. We want to help evangelize those, driving greater understanding and adoption of Apple in commercial businesses, in education institutions, and around the world. And so you'll hear from Jamf really more as a thought leader here, saying Apple is doing something really cool, pointing over to our friend Apple next to us, saying, check this out. You should do this as an IT admin to be more successful than you were yesterday. And finally, the extend bucket. I've touched on this a few times, but beyond operating systems and compatibility and acceleration, there is a real chance here to leverage Jamf's greatest strength, or one of our greatest strengths, and that is by enhancing what Apple does best. We would call this like a +1 solution. So taking what Apple does best in the market and adding something on top to extend that value. That might be a unique app or workflow for your industry, for the type of customer or end user that you serve. Whatever it is, it's really a strength of Jamf's to be able to be that +1. And so we love being in lockstep with Apple. That is a commitment that is unwavering. And beyond that, we want to help make Apple work for your business and your market in unique ways. And that's this promise. So same-day support aside, if you are an IT admin veteran and you've been through this a few times, those previous slides maybe are some new information and some rehash. Again, if you're brand new, that's probably all new information. Welcome aboard, very exciting time. I want to begin by rewinding the clock just a couple of months here to WWDC, which was in June, and this is Apple's once-a-year event, a very big deal, the Worldwide Developers Conference. And so the title tells you something very important. This is an event where Apple communicates directly with its vibrant developer community and gives it information about what's coming and what's exciting and how the developer community can best be ready to support what Apple is doing later in the year. And we know that so many of you rely on key applications as well, so we keep close tabs on WWDC every year. This is really kind of a key window, if you will, into what Apple is doing. I want to take a quick step back and look at this just briefly before we trudge into the next section. So the first thing is operating systems. Of course, every year we expect new versions of operating systems from Apple. This year is no different, and we saw iOS 15, iPadOS 15, macOS Monterey, and of course tvOS 15 as well. Together virtually is a major theme for a lot of companies, Jamf included, but of course beginning with Apple through this world that we live in now, the new normal beginning about 18 months ago. We need new ways to connect with other humans, whether that's in the classroom, in business, or just with friends and family. Enterprise privacy and security. Apple has a reputation for being a privacy-first company. They have really doubled down on that, I would say very strongly, every year for the past, 5 years at this point. They have been very forward with privacy and security being at the core of their company. That's been great to see. Jamf is very excited about that. And finally, a healthy digital balance. This is something that Apple was working on prior to the pandemic, but over the last 18 months has really taken it to another level. This has been an opportunity again, whether you're managing a team at work, overseeing classroom instruction, or just helping people connect with other people, to kind of take a broader view of our responsibilities and opportunities as IT leaders and say, look, IT is a productivity tool, yes, but it is also a window where our employees, our students, our friends and family can become healthier people in general outside of the workplace. And so we want tech to enable that as well. Apple is leading the way there. So I want to highlight a few things that we learned about at WWDC that are being delivered this fall. And we now know that iOS 15, tvOS 15, and iPadOS 15 are coming on September 20th, or rather delivered on September 20th. macOS Monterey is coming soon. We don't have an exact date yet, at least I haven't seen one, but that is coming soon. So keep an eye out for Monterey. Looking ahead, though, I want to talk about what is included in these fall operating system releases. So first of all, user enrollment enhancements. The key takeaway here is this is actually a story that Apple began writing 2 years ago. In 2019, user enrollment was this brand new concept for BYOD, bring your own device, right? And I was at WWDC that year. I remember walking around that convention hall and hearing this term, user enrollment, for the first time, capital U, capital E. And it was kind of like, Apple is putting a big emphasis on BYOD. I wonder what this will look like. Well, with 2 years retrospect and kind of the benefit of hindsight, we now know that this is a key thing for Apple. They want to see a better version of BYOD that really streamlines that process and makes it easier to get users enrolled. So if we can prevent that from being a cumbersome experience, make it even more streamlined than it was before, that's a great boon to the end user. And so think of this like zero-touch deployment, but for bring your own device. Really cool opportunity here. So Jamf is working to support service discovery, which is a piece of something called account-driven user enrollment. That'll be available in beta in September from Jamf and a GA to follow. So keep an eye out for that. Second up is Apple Configurator for iOS. Now, Apple Configurator has been around for a while, and this is a tool that you could previously put only on a Mac, and you would connect another Mac to that to be able to enroll it in your fleet. So maybe you purchased a bunch of Macs outside of Apple Business Manager or outside of Apple School Manager. Previously, that was kind of a pain point for people because you wanted a better way to bring them into your environment, right? To make them fully managed and bring them kind of under the umbrella, if you will. By bringing this application to iOS, Apple is really unlocking a very cool enrollment process here. You can put this app on an iOS device, grab a cord and plug in a Mac and bring that Mac under enrollment. So really big opportunity here if you, maybe you yourself purchased Macs outside of those enrollment programs. Maybe they were pre-existing and those were purchased before you thought of a strategy for enrollment, right? And now you're looking back like, man, I wish we brought them under enrollment at the time of purchase. Now you can. This is a very big step up, so look for this this fall as well. Very cool change from Apple. Third up here in our deck is Declarative Device Management. This is a brand new term from Apple, and it's something especially for the IT admins on the call that I would recommend you learn. Do a Google search on this, poke around on the internet, on jamfnation.com specifically, the largest community of Apple IT admins on the internet, right there at jamfnation.com. That's free and open to anyone, Jamf customer or not. Just go and search for Declarative Device Management. This is a major change for Apple, a very big opportunity and evolution. It's a brand new protocol, and when this is fully implemented, this will allow a device to be semi-autonomous, meaning it does not have to reach back out to the server for confirmation on every change, every configuration. The state of that device can almost be a living, breathing thing. It'll recognize where it is, how the employee or user is behaving, and change the state of that device accordingly. So very cool opportunities here. This is something we are actively looking at and really excited about. I think Apple is very much leading the market on this. We see a lot of opportunity here. So you'll see this from Apple. Jamf is, of course, following in Apple's footsteps here. And again, just as kind of a personal note, I would encourage you to search around a bit and get to know that, because it will be, I think, a big deal for a long time coming. Next up is something called Erase All Content in Settings. This is actually something that has been a thing on mobile devices, but is now making a big debut on the Mac. So a really cool use case here, both in education and in the commercial space, anytime you need to fundamentally wipe a device. On iOS and iPadOS, that was very easy because Erase All Content in Settings, it's not quite one click, it might be 2 or 3 clicks. It is very fast and very streamlined. And so very quickly, you can click through those steps and have a device that is clean, all of that personal information and corporate information is wiped, and that device is ready to be used by a different person in a different building, even in a different use case. So very cool opportunities here in education. It might be re-provisioning at the end of the semester. For commercial business, this could be device lifecycle, right? So taking a device back from an employee that's leaving, for example, wiping it, and then re-provisioning that device. Very cool opportunity there for Mac. Now, speaking of Mac, something very interesting is happening in the space with M1 Macs. And you'll remember the M1 chip, or more precisely the SoC, the system on chip. This is a very big deal for Apple, a strategic investment to build their own SoC internally, which, if you are less technical or non-technical, basically means Apple builds excellent equipment, hardware, excellent software, and they have excellent services and integration. What they wanted to do was take that a step further and build a chip that is really top of market to power many of their devices, beginning with Mac. And so last year, we saw this debut, the M1 system on chip. And this has been a really big deal. I've seen countless videos about this machine, and we have countless M1 Macs in Jamf as well, where it really took processes that were big and tough and just breaks them down and kind of annihilates the process because it is so fast. That might be heavy data crunching, accessing big complex databases, doing heavy graphic design in Adobe apps. All of those things are much easier with the M1 chip. So what's happening here? Well, in short, if you're using an M1 Mac and you want to force a software upgrade, you can now do so via MDM. So very cool change here, especially if your organization is thinking, hey, those M1 Macs, they're really awesome, right? Very powerful machines. We want to adopt them. Before I do, I need a way to make sure that I can manage software updates. Well, great news. Check that box. Apple has made that available, and we are excited to make that available as well. So very cool change there. Highly encourage you to look into M1 Macs, by the way. Again, this is just my note. But if you haven't and you're supporting any kind of intensive computing teams, or I would say even executive teams, they're just really fast and I think really cool. So if you're a nerd like me, you probably already know about them. If you don't, take a look. Next are a couple of privacy enhancements. So it goes without saying, even though I said this before, Apple is a privacy-first company. And two things they have debuted are Private Relay and Hide My Email. So Private Relay, I want you to think of this like a way to privately browse the internet. Using a very sophisticated relay technology, Apple can shield your IP address, your browsing habits, where you're going, what you're doing. That is really a big deal for anyone that wants private browsing anywhere in your life, right? And so keep an eye out for that. That is coming. My understanding is it is a paid feature as well. So definitely something that I will be looking at, and I would encourage you to look at as well. Again, anywhere that browsing privately is valued, I think there will be value there. The second is a technology called Hide My Email that automatically routes internet traffic through proxy networks. Oh, you know what? These are actually backwards. Flip these descriptions. You can actually use a randomly generated email address, so getting greater control over who knows your actual address to help cut down on spam. So That I think is also a very big change for, again, anybody that cares about their email inbox being as clean and protected as possible. I think we've all seen the rise of things like phishing attacks via email. That is certainly not new, but it does seem to be taking on greater and greater threat levels in the modern era. And so Hide My Email is a great way to kind of protect your private email address and control that over time. So again, encourage you to look at both of these if you are a privacy-forward organization. Next is something called macOS Recovery Lock. So again, Mac has been the central computing hardware piece for a long time for a lot of teams and organizations. M1 is kind of pouring gas on that fire and really accelerating that trend. With this change, though, admins can set a password that must be entered before you can restart that computer into the recovery operating system. So really protecting the more sensitive parts of that device in a very easy way. You lock it down with a password that you only know as the IT admin. The end user is no longer able to access the recovery OS. So again, another layer of protection and security. We talk about this a lot in security circles, but a layered approach to security. It's not, one massive vault door. It's many doors with many keys and many combinations and, many different ways of kind of positioning that door. The same is true with how you can oversee your fleet as an IT admin. This is another great layer on top of other layers to make sure that your users are protected and your company is protected as well. A new technology called Required App is really interesting, and I wanted to mention this because this applies to unsupervised devices, which is very interesting. Usually we would talk about unsupervised devices as almost a more limited form of management, right? It's not full supervision, so that device is usually not institutionally owned or corporately owned. Unsupervised devices are usually BYOD, right? It's somebody that brought their device that they paid for into the workplace. And so they will not allow, in most cases, supervision on that device because they paid for it, it's theirs, and they wouldn't want supervision there. So what do we do as an organization to help ensure that they can still succeed at their job, in the field, away from the office, doing anything when they don't have supervision on the device? Well, one way we might be able to do that is by requiring a single application to appear on that device. Really cool opportunities here for that critical business app or that critical school application to just seamlessly, magically be on that device. We are actively investigating this as well. This is something that is really cool and really builds into a broader story of application management that Jamf has invested a lot in since an acquisition last year, and you'll hear a lot more on going into the future as well. We think apps are central, and so this isn't going away. We'd love to hear how you would use this, actually. If you want to hop on jamfnation.com and let us know, hey, my use case is X. Does anyone else have the same use case? That is a great way to surface feedback for us as well. This is, just speaking again as a nerd here, a personal favorite of mine, something called Universal Control. I cannot wait to get my hands on this later this year. This allows an iPad to be situated next to a Mac, but to have a single keyboard and a single mouse used on both of them. And just let that sink in for a minute. These devices that used to have such different use cases. The iPad was in the field, more mobile, used as a kiosk, on a couch in your office somewhere, now work from home. The Mac, desktop, right? Massive power, huge computing. They're just kind of different devices, and that's why they fit so well in different parts of our life. But now you can set them next to each other and have that single desktop experience across both of them with one keyboard and one mouse. So I'm personally very excited about the potential here. I think it's very cool, especially if you're not somebody that wants an array of 2 or 3 monitors right in front of you while you do your work. I know for those of us like myself that work in IT, that is sometimes a preferred solution, but a lot of times it's not. And a lot of users do have an iPad and do have a Mac, and using them side by side, that is a powerful combination. So keep your eye on this as it becomes available. And I would encourage you to use this as a chance to be a thought leader in your company. Get out there, talk to executives or anyone, sales folks that might have these devices. Tell them it's available because it is really cool. So just quickly touching on the new operating systems that are available this fall from Apple. I'm going to keep this brief. You can, of course, find lots more information on jamf.com about these operating systems, including some really cool resources on how to manage operating system upgrades. So beginning here with iOS 15, this is of course the world's most popular operating system. A really cool thing called Group FaceTime coming to iOS 15, allowing FaceTime to be much more accessible to groups of people. Different modes for work and home. I think you can understand what drove this. It was kind of the need to work from home, right? And now we're back in this middle ground where some folks are in the office, some are not, some are hybrid, some are somewhere on that spectrum. Better application privacy, something called live text, which you can look up online for some really cool demo videos about how you can point your camera at text and interact with that live. And then some new keys that can be added to your wallet, including, I think they're rolling this out in beta right now, your state identification, a key to your front door on your house, and a key to your car. All of those are, of course, dependent on the support from developers, so keep an eye on that. And in the case of State ID, keep an eye on your state adopting that as well and Apple going into your state. My thought is that will probably be a state-by-state rollout. Really exciting stuff. You can imagine the potential for building access keys right there on an iOS device. Keep an eye on this. That could be a very cool use case as Apple continues to invest here in wallet and that key technology. iPadOS 15 is, if you don't know, a standalone operating system. They broke apart, or rather forked, iOS a couple of years ago, and so iOS is its own thing. iPadOS is its own standalone thing as well. These are different operating systems now today. A couple of interesting changes here would be the app library for iPad, quick notes for someone like me that's productive on an iPad. That is super useful. A shelf function, widgets on the iPad, which I think we all know and love from iOS. That's coming to iPad as well. And then new translation functions. And as we'll see in a bit, the ability to restrict Siri from doing translation work in the cloud and keep that local on the device, which is pretty cool as well. tvOS 15 is the latest version of course, the tvOS operating system. One of the biggest technologies that is coming is something called SharePlay. This is very, very significant. I know Apple is hard at work on this. The ability to watch videos and share your screen with others in real time. They also showed something at their most recent Apple event about doing fitness classes together as well with SharePlay. So that technology will unlock a lot of really interesting end user features. I think a lot of customer delight, if you've heard that term, a lot of delight will come from SharePlay. I just have a sense there that people are seeking and end users are seeking connections more than ever since the last 18 months kind of drove us into isolation. This is a great way that Apple will empower human connection, and so we're excited about that. Spatial audio, of course, is a very important thing to audiophiles and anybody streaming video. Very cool way to kind of make audio more 3D around you as you listen to things. HomeKit is something that I'm personally just really into and is a very cool way to automate your house. They're continuing to invest there. And then Face ID and Touch ID sign-in for tvOS, which is a really cool add. I'm pumped about that because it means no more key codes, right? No more pins. You can just use Face ID or Touch ID, so that's really great. Finally, macOS Monterey. This is, in a lot of ways, one of the most significant releases of the year for a lot of us because of what it empowers, desktop and laptop computing. Universal Control, touched on that. Safari is getting some updates to make it more performant. And then AirPlay is coming to Mac. All of these things together mean that Mac is very much a flexible platform, whether you want, kind of like I mentioned earlier, the big, powerful desktop class experience with a Mac, or something more flexible, like a MacBook alongside of an iPad with universal control, you can really work the way that you feel the most productive and empowered with Apple products. So we think that's pretty cool. macOS Monterey is, of course, something we're all looking forward to. So these changes and many more coming this fall. So what do we recommend for OS upgrades? I get this a lot. This is something we've talked about for years. And especially if you're new, this can be a very intimidating thing your first time through the ringer. What I want to say is have no fear. With a little bit of forethought and planning, you can be an IT hero through upgrade season. This is a major opportunity for you, your organization, and most importantly, the end users that you serve. So number one, I would say delighting your end users is the goal here. Keep that in mind. It's easy for me, at least when I'm doing my day job, to get really sucked into tech and to think, okay, macOS Monterey, iOS 15, feature, right? But we need to remember that the goal is not just feature support, and it's not just operating system upgrades. It is delighting and making our end users more successful. So I think if we keep that in mind, we're already on a great path. The second is to begin testing and validation if this makes sense for you. This is a pro tip for a lot of companies that have those kind of set schedules and processes for how they do IT change. If you know the phrase change management, this applies to you. Test and validate that operating system release before you make it available. You can delay operating system versions with Apple and with Jamf for up to 90 days. So if that makes sense, hey, use it. It is something that is available to make you successful. And finally, deliver OS upgrades on your schedule. Again, maybe it makes sense to delay. Maybe it makes sense to make them available right on day one. Whatever is best for your company is good with Jamf. I would also say to take a look at scoping. This is something within Jamf Pro. We've got a patented technology called Smart Groups that is really a great way to kind of say very quickly, look at my entire fleet, tell me who has upgraded, or on the flip side, who has not. So go in, scope this upgrade based on version number. So iOS is used as an example here, but you can scope by any version number. And again, you can kind of track the upgrades as they happen in real time. And I would say, hey, in a couple of weeks, you'll be able to see if there is a small population that has not upgraded yet. That is a great action item for you. Hey, folks, what can we do to make sure that is successful for you? Do you need anything from IT? Again, if you need extra time, you can delay updates by up to 90 days. Between 1 and 90 days, the choice is yours. And this does apply across all of the operating systems that we mentioned here today, all 4. This one is kind of an obvious one. You know this already, but it does bear repeating. Plan and communicate. The more that you can communicate to your team, your manager, your executive staff, the better we tend to see these things go. And so you'll be able to kind of head off questions, fear, uncertainty, and just get everyone pulling in the same direction. This upgrade is great for our company. We are excited. Now go upgrade. And again, you look like the IT hero there. So I want to walk through just briefly a potential upgrade workflow. This one is for iOS. As an example, of course, you can do this for any of the 4 operating systems we are talking about here today, but one example, just to kind of touch on the different ways you could do this. Path number 1 is doing updates via end user. So the end user would install the update by through their settings menu. There's no interaction here from IT, pretty straightforward. And the caching servers are available to help with the download load. We know that can be pretty hefty, so I would use, if you have one available, a caching server for your org, just to make this a more local download rather than reaching out across the internet or the world. That can save you some bandwidth and download time. The second path is automatic install via IT. And so, of course, MDM command, and we just touched on this, now available for M1 Macs as well. But send out that command to do the upgrade. You can issue a download or a download and install command, depending on what you want. And then, choose the scoping, like we mentioned a minute ago. If this is for a small group, great. If this is across the board at your company, that's great too. Whatever makes the most sense for your team. The real beauty of Jamf plus Apple is it's very granular. And so whatever you need to be successful, we can help get you there. Couple of next steps here, and we'll jump right into live Q&A. So again, keep dropping those questions into the Q&A panel, and we'll get to those in just a second. I would say if you are new, all of my newbies, I want you to download this resource from jamf.com, the upgrades guide for beginners. It is a fantastic walkthrough, kind of a 101, if you will, of what iPad and iOS upgrades look like firsthand. So if you're kind of thinking, oh boy, I've never done this before, this is the guide for you. It is a fantastic resource for your first time through or to brush up on an old habit. Take a look. The second thing I would say is maybe you need the cheat sheet, right? The cliff notes, if you will, of what upgrade season looks like. A great resource there is called the Simplified iPadOS and iOS Upgrade Workflow. Very short one-pager, kind of just a brief on what this looks like and how you should proceed. So again, grab that from jamf.com. It's great to kind of keep on your desktop for the next couple of weeks or months as you roll out operating system upgrades.